Welcome in episode number 28 of the St0ner Sports Radio Podcast. Joining me today is friend of the show, Kaz Gray, YouTuber and Twitch Kick YouTube streamer extraordinaire, doing everything he can to get his lovely channel the clout it deserves. We will be talking about Titans' new stadium. The Bucks are out as the number one seed after losing to the Heat in 5 games. Is Will Levis the number one pick? He thinks his family members and himself are for sure certain about that. Second round Stetson Bennett talk and lots more coming up at you. Kaz, how are we doing this morning?
Like long ass couple of days, but you know, we out here. How are you, St0ner?
Doing good. Trying.
I just found out that he's like actually not a bear. Like, obviously.
Yeah, the reveal is shocking. The reality is stunning. So let's talk about last night, right? NBA action going on. I don't know if you got to catch any of this last night. I was able to catch kind of like the last half of most of these games. But the big thing was Milwaukee kind of blowing that big lead to the Heat. Jimmy Butler forces overtime with this weird alley-oop kind of shot that he was probably fouled on, but you know they don't call fouls with under 2 seconds to go, so he had to take the contact and lay it in. Giannis says the season's not a failure for the Bucks, kind of chalking this up to, you know, kind of a learning experience and kind of, you know, just how to handle what he said was they were looking ahead to winning a championship probably before they should have been. What's your takeaway from last night?
So first thing I want to touch on is like the part about Giannis, because I actually watched that video like before I went to bed, and honestly, I think Giannis's take on it, you know, it was one of those things where he like has perspective and it gives people like a new perspective to look at, because it's like anytime a really good team like the Bucks like doesn't win the championship or whatever, people will chalk it up to being a failure. But he's just like, well, you know, he asked like the reporters, like, so if you don't get the promotion at the end of the year, did you fail this year or something like that? And that's like a perspective that we don't look at as far as like sports goes. But this is their job, and it's like, yeah, not everybody's gonna win a championship. I mean, at the end of the day, out of the 30 to 32 teams there are in each league, only one team's gonna win a championship. So it's like, you know, I like this perspective. You know, yeah. People might not agree with that take, but it's like I definitely appreciated what he was saying.
Yeah, when you compare,
as far as the Heat goes, honestly, at some point we got to give Jimmy Butler his roses, because Game 4 was probably the best performance I've ever seen from a Heat player in the playoffs. I know LeBron had some great performances, D-Wade, Bosh, even Shaq, like they've had great performances, but Jimmy Butler just put the backpack on the past, honestly, the entire series. Like he was killing it the entire series, but really the last 2 games, I mean, the dude shot 68% in Game 4, and I mean, he shot a little bit worse. He shot like 51%. That's still pretty damn good. And he just put the team on his back and dragged them from the depths of losing Game 5, and ended up turning around and getting a 4-1 victory over the 1 seed, though. Like, at some point, Jimmy Butler got to get his roses, because I really feel like he's one of the most underappreciated stars in the league. And yes, he is a star. I don't care what no one says. Like, he is a star. So now, yeah. I don't know what's going to happen in the next series, but I think Jimmy Butler has definitely put his name like even further on the map than it was before.
Yeah, I mean, because, you know, upsetting a 1 seed, you have to give the team credit, but also when you drop 56 and then come back and drop 30 plus the next night. In his career, when he's dropped 50 plus, the next game he's averaged only 19 points a game. And the team that he's played for has lost by an average of 13 points as well. So to have him flip that script of, I'm not going to be passive, because that was the big thing, right? Like he would have a big night, and then the next night he'd be out here trying to be Steve Nash, distributing the ball, you know, not shooting it, when we know what he's capable of doing, considering the numbers that he put up in game 4. You know, it was like we
exactly.
know you're capable of 50. You know, why be so passive? And that was the criticism in the past, but last night not passive. The shot, as you said, 51%, not falling. I mean, 68's a hard number to like duplicate in the NBA. I mean, that's insane for one guy to shoot that well. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's time to give Jimmy Butler his roses. I think that, you know, you look back at those LeBron games against the Pacers and PG, and you know, those were kind of, you know, he had that buzzer beater layup or whatever in that series where they moved on to play the Celtics the next round, and that series was good as well. But I think you're right. I think this is a time to appreciate Jimmy Butler and what he's been doing for the Heat. And like you said, this Knicks series is going to be interesting. I mean, both of these teams have assets that are coming in a little hobbled. I know Sims is undergoing surgery. He will be done for the playoffs for the Knicks. Um, and
And of course,
Julius Randle coming off that sprained ankle in that second quarter of this last game.
yeah.
We'll see if that affects him at all. He should be fine. Um,
I
but
mean,
yeah,
it's gonna have to be an even bigger performance from Butler because I like one thing obviously that we didn't bring up was the two other great players on the Heat and Kyle Hero, not or
Kyle Lowry.
Tyler Hero. I don't
Yeah,
know why I
yeah.
said Kyle. Tyler Hero. I don't know why I was thinking of Kyle Kuzma, but anyways.
Yeah, same person. There's a
um, but Tyler Hero got hurt in the first game. Victor Oladipo got hurt for the playoffs in the second game. So it's like really it's gonna be up to Jimmy and Bam and maybe even Gabe Vincent as well.
no, Kyle
To
Lowry
really
also didn't play too bad.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he had a couple good shots, but you know what was he a hammy? Isn't that what it was? Was it hammy or what was he riddled with coming in here? It was something. He
Yeah.
didn't play
I'm
like
trying
the
to
first two
remember.
games.
I don't remember to be honest with you.
But anyways, he was hurt too. So I mean, it's Jimmy's time to, like you said, team up with Bam, Gabe Vincent, Struce, good 3-point shooter. Max has been playing pretty good for them. Duncan Robinson been quiet, limited minutes for him. We'll probably see more of them with this kind of, you know, hobbling that they're doing into this second round. But
Yeah.
very impressive. And I agree with what you said about Giannis. I think that when you take it from that perspective, you know, what would have been not a failure looking back at this? Would the conference finals have not been a failure? Would, you know, the second round not have been a failure? I mean, I think when people call the season a failure, because you don't win the ship, like you said, I mean, 31 teams aren't going to win it. It's only going to be one. So it's
Yeah.
kind of unfair to be like, oh, it's a failure if you don't win it all. But I get the fact that they were one of the favorites. I mean, 27% of people that filled out their playoff bracket challenge on ESPN picked the Bucks, which was the
Yeah.
highest. Second was the Suns. So I mean, you know, we knew that they were the favorite in the East to come out of there, but we knew it wasn't going to be easy for them. Did we know that Jimmy Butler was going to put on that backpack, like you said, and just carry this team into the second round like he did? No, I don't think anybody thought that the Heat were going to be able to do that. But we know what Jimmy Butler is capable of, and I agree with you. He is a star. Is he a superstar? I don't know if the consistency is really there enough to say that, but I think that he is probably a top 7 to 10 player in the league right now. I don't think you can really debate that.
Yeah. I think he's definitely at least tier 2. You can make the argument tier 3. I'd say between tier 3, tier 2,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
Like obviously he's not up there with like the Giannis's or the KDs, the LeBrons of the world, or
Yeah,
Steph Curry,
yeah.
but he's definitely like somebody who people know by name and by his play style as well.
Would you put
But
Klay Thompson above or below him?
I'd put him on equal footing, honestly.
See,
I'd
that's
put him
exactly.
about
Yeah,
equal.
yeah. I
Like
agree.
Clay's
I agree.
not quite top tier, but it's like he's definitely like Clay's also a superstar. So
Yeah,
put him
I
about the same
I
same
agree.
level.
Anything else playoff wise you want to touch on? I know that the Knicks got it done for the first time in a while. 2013 was the last time they got out of the first round, the Carmelo days out there. Any thoughts on Madison Square Garden being alive in the second round here, or any other thoughts?
I mean, this is the best Knicks team I've seen since like back when I was actually a Knicks fan, back like in the Mellow days. Mellow, back when they had like Mellow, Tyson Chandler, Raymond Felton, J.R. Smith, like the year um I'm trying to remember who won I don't remember if it was Spurs or It was Spurs and Heat. I remember that, but I mean,
I think it was the Heat.
this is. I think that they could absolutely make a run. Now, I don't know if they're gonna beat Philly or I'm assuming or Boston still has to win Game 6, right? So
Yeah, that they play tonight. Trae Young hit that
yeah,
three to extend this to Game 6. It's heading back to Atlanta. Um, so big game for them, but I think that
yeah,
Boston will probably close it out on the road. If not, I mean, they
I'd
should
agree.
still win the series. I don't think the Hawks are too good of a team. They played better last game, but I think it was more of the Celtics sleepwalking through that second half than it was the Hawks being like, "Oh, the Hawks are coming." I mean,
Right.
not that I'm not down with both the 1 and the 2 seed being gone. I think that would be very interesting to just blow the whole Eastern Conference up, and then if Philly loses in the second round to the Hawks, I mean that would be even more stunning. But I don't
And
think that's gonna
imagine a
happen.
Hawks versus Knicks Eastern Conference
I
Finals. I
would,
highly doubt it will happen.
but I
I
would
don't
love
doubt
it.
the Knicks, but it's just a matter of whether or not the Hawks can win these next two games and then beat the Sixers. I don't think they'd beat the Sixers if hypothetically they even beat the Celtics.
Yeah,
Now, personally, I think the Celtics are going to win the series,
yeah,
but it's like if that happened, oh my god, that would be a
yeah.
crazy Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, I mean,
But
because going into this, we thought, oh, the West is going to be the messy one. Like the West is going to be the one where it's like, oh, the Clippers could beat the Suns, and then oh, we going into it, we thought, this could be the real, we thought the East was just going to go chalk pretty much.
yeah,
We that's what people thought, and I think that this is a pleasant surprise, and if the Hawks win tonight, we'll kind of lean our ear to the ground and see what it looks like back in Boston for Game 7, but. I think we're probably looking at Boston and Philly. What are your thoughts on the 76ers? They looked okay sweeping Brooklyn. I know it's kind of hard to say when you sweep a team that, he looked okay, but they didn't look like super much like they didn't look like
like
world beaters.
yeah. Well, I'm hoping they turn it around only because I picked this like for my bracket, I picked the Sixers to win it all. So I'm I mean, with the Bucks out, I feel like that takes a lot of pressure off of them because honestly now realistically they only really have to worry about Boston. I mean, I'm sure the Knicks or the Heat could give them problems as well. And there's still a chance the Hawks come back and win their series. But I don't know. I think this is probably the best chance that the Sixers have at getting to the finals. Like, I know Boston beat them last year, but I just overall think that Philly has a better chance, but they definitely have to play. I mean, it's hard to say they didn't play well just because, like, you look at it from, like, from a distance, they swept the Nets. So it's like, most people be like, well, you can say they didn't play well, but they swept. Well, yeah, but they didn't really I never got the vibe that they dominated that series, and I
Exactly.
feel like that's what you're saying as well.
Exactly.
So
I
we'll
mean,
see. I mean, if they pick up their play, like if they can get it together, I feel like they have a good shot. I mean,
yeah.
obviously Embiid's dealing with an injury right now, with a knee injury right now, so hopefully he's getting some good rest. And if he can come back, maybe not at 100%, but if he can come back and you know be a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for? Like just a little more optimal with like his knee injury, then I think he'll be. I think they'll be fine in general.
Yeah, like if he comes out at like 75%, like that's going to be good enough to probably give you quality minutes, right? I mean, even if he's hobbling a little bit, he can probably still give you 15 and 10. I
Yeah,
feel like that's kind of what we'd be looking for in that first game if he's hindered at all. But I agree. I think it's one of those things where it's like they looked good. They did what they were supposed to do. I don't think anybody thought that the Nets were going to win that series.
no,
We obviously knew the Nets were there coasting off of the success of their star lineup that started the season, and then they kind of had Mikal Bridges go on that stint where he was playing really well, and they were still winning games. Spencer Dinwiddie was helping them out a little bit. Um, and then it just kind of got to that point where it was like they're good, but they're not really supposed to be here. That was kind of the notion that I got. And I mean,
yeah,
76ers took care of business, but like you said, didn't look like world beaters, didn't look like, oh, this team's going to the finals. But that can change,
yeah.
and I think that part of it was the competitiveness of like knowing that they were playing this Nets team that wasn't great.
My only worry for Embiid in general, though, is the fact that assuming the Celtics, like, obviously you can't really make any assumptions about the series yet, but it's like if you're playing the Celtics in the next round, Al Horford ain't Nick Claxton,
No,
so it's like
no,
it's
no,
gonna be
no.
a tougher matchup for him because I know Horford's up there in age, but it's like he's still a pretty good center, and even if he has to play the Hawks, like Clint Capella is no slouch either,
No,
and even Okongwu off the bench isn't bad either. So
no.
it's like he's gonna have a much harder matchup. But that's no shade to Nick Claxton, but I'm just saying it's like you got to play Al Horford or Clint Capella in the second round, and
Yeah.
you're dealing with a knee injury. That's not going to be easy.
No, it's not. And Clint's more obviously a defensive guy than he is an offensive threat, and that's kind of where his value for the Hawks comes in, right? Because he's got that big body that he can kind of lay against Embiid, and they can kind of battle it out. Now Embiid's the better player, but like you said,
Oh,
it's
100%.
100% better than going against Nick Claxton. So,
Yeah.
so
Exactly.
I mean, like you said, no shade to Nick Claxton because better than point, he's in the top 0.1% of players that play basketball in general, but
Exactly.
in comparison, yeah. So that's, I mean, so right now, I mean, when you flip it over to the Western Side Conference, you have Suns and Denver going at it in their first game on Saturday, or yeah, Friday or Saturday. I think it's Saturday. They have that second round matchup. That's looking like it should be a good series. But what was your takeaway from the Clippers series with Kawhi tearing his meniscus, and we didn't know at the time that that was what it was. And so me, being the jerk I am, was like, "Oh, Kawhi's being a pussy." I mean, I was like, go in there, like
Yeah.
like Michael Jordan wouldn't sit out, like and then when it came out that it was a torn meniscus, I felt like shit because I mean, Princess tore her meniscus, and it was terrible for her, and it still bothers her. So I can't imagine you know, the pain he was going through, and I understand him sitting out. But if he had played that whole series and had been healthy, which has been the big question for him this entire last 2 years of being a part of this Clippers team,
Yeah.
you've played 22% of your games if you're Kawhi Leonard on the floor with Paul George together. And when you guys are on the floor that 22% of the time, you win 75% of your games.
Mm,
And if that's any indication, in this series when they had played together, they won those games. So
yeah.
so I mean, we look at this series and we go, going into it, this was the one that I wanted to watch the most because I thought this series was going to be a real slugfest between them and Phoenix. And unfortunately, give Russell Westbrook his flowers for the way he had to carry that team offensively for most of those later games.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, he didn't get his best shot at beating his old pal Kevin Durant again. He did not.
Nope.
He didn't get the help. I mean, no PG, no Kawhi. It's just you and Eric Gordon, and I mean, it just we knew
Norman
it
Powell
wasn't going to
too.
be enough.
I feel like Norman Powell played pretty well
Yeah,
in
he
the
did.
series as well. I mean, honestly, I don't agree with Stephen A. Smith very often, but I watched what he was saying on First Take. He brought up the fact that he feels like if Kawhi and Paul George were playing in this series as a whole, the Clippers probably win this going away. And that's exactly how I feel. I feel like the Suns are not as good as they were last year when they were in, or they didn't, no, 2 years ago. I'm sorry. Like I don't feel like this is as good a Suns team as they were when they went to the finals. And I'm not. That's not KD's fault, obviously. Like it's just like I just don't feel like. Well, maybe I think the issue actually is I think the West is better this year than it was
Exactly.
the year they went to the finals.
Yeah.
So now they're playing against the Nuggets, and I'm not quite sure how that series is gonna go. Um, But again, I'm going back to the Clippers real quick. I mean, like you said about Russ, you got to give him his flowers. Norman Powell did his thing. Eric Gordon did his thing. Even Zubats did a pretty good job of rebounding as well. But I mean, it was very clear that there was a big talent discrepancy in that entire series. Obviously, the Clippers took the first game, but after that, like
Yeah.
it was all Suns.
Yeah, and the thing
So
the thing about it to me that was kind of shocking though was even without them being on the floor, none of those games were blowouts. And like you said,
nope.
that's what makes me agree with you when you say Phoenix is not probably as good as that finals team that played against the Bucks and
Yeah.
lost. I think that you're looking at a team that is like you said going against stronger competition round by round compared to back in 2021 when the West was not probably as lopsided strong between two or three teams battling it out. Now you got teams like Sacramento fighting for, their lives now as they're down 3-2. You're looking at an LA
Yeah.
Lakers team that we kind of knew coming into this was going to be on the upswing, considering that they had their older players coming off of injury and then they were healthy, and they had that, I feel like that hunger kind of back of where, like, damn, like, we really let this thing get down to a 7 seed, had to do a play-in game against Minnesota that we had to barely win in overtime. And now here we are, and I think LeBron has taken the trash talk from Dylan Brooks and kind of elevated his mental toughness, I guess. I want to say mental
Yeah.
toughness, but he's notched up his aggressiveness a bunch. And when LeBron is aggressive, the whole team is aggressive, and I think that benefits the team as a whole, opposed to him being, just this in awe legend, whatever you want to call him. I feel like teams kind of, they're a little more passive when he's on the floor. They don't want to upset LeBron. They don't want to, I mean, but the thing is when you look at the way that the West is constructed, I think that, like you said, Phoenix being out in this second round, totally plausible. Denver has the manpower to stick with them, and it doesn't get any easier for them moving forward.
Nope. Because then, even if they get past Denver, you have a whole plethora of teams that you really don't want to play in that next round. I mean, if Sacramento can win these next 2 games, then you might have to play the Kings. If they don't, you got to play the Warriors, and the Warriors, even as a 6th seed, look incredibly dominant. And honestly, I don't. If they can get past the Kings, I like their chances to get past a lot of these teams and possibly get back to the finals. But even then, you know, if you get past the Nuggets, then you might either have to play the Grizzlies or the Lakers. Like, obviously, we all know LeBron's up there in age, but it's like Austin Reeves has been doing a pretty good job in the series. Rui, after getting traded from the Wizards, has absolutely revitalized his career. Although last 2 games he hasn't done much,
Yeah.
but it's like the first 3 games he was
Mm-hmm.
killing it.
Oh
So
yeah.
if Rui can get back on track, I mean, the Lakers are going to be really dangerous. Now I will throw this out there. I think the Lakers win Game 6, and I
Mm-hmm.
think they'll get to the second round. Just because I feel like LeBron's going to turn up in
Yeah.
this
Oh,
next game.
yeah. He said he was. That was the quote after the game. Is "I'll play better in Game 6." Was the
Yeah,
quote in the post game, and I was like, well, I mean, if you do that, I don't have a problem thinking
I feel
that
like
you.
at this
Yeah.
point he's just screwing with them. Like, because Dylan Brooks wanted to run his mouth, then he loses 2 games, doesn't show up for media for either one of them, and then they win again. And now I feel like LeBron was just kind of giving them that one low key. Like, I'm being facetious, obviously, but it's like, LeBron, I feel like is going to actually turn up in Game 6, and even if they lose Game 6, I don't think LeBron's giving a Game 7 to Memphis. Like, I don't think he's going to give it up to Memphis, but
No.
I have a hard time believing the Grizzlies are going to beat them in Game 6.
Yeah. I don't. I don't think so either. I think you're literally looking at um a situation where now Dylan Brooks is still not wrong, right? And LeBron hasn't dropped 40 this whole entire series. I mean, he's not wrong on that sense. But he did call him out. There's no doubt about that. And as much of a Dylan Brooks fan as I am, since I'm an Oregon Ducks fan, love Dylan Brooks, love him to death.
Yeah.
He's not a very good shooter. At least he hasn't been this series. Now he's streaky. He can give you a game where he can hit 5 threes in a game, but he'll go the next 2 games going 2 for 10. He's that kind of guy where it's
Yeah.
streaky and he is aggressive. Um, uh, and a lot of people have been saying this, and I think this would be kind of a wild theory, but if Draymond leaves Golden State after this season, and I feel like a good home for him might be Memphis,
Oh
because
my god.
with him and Dylan Brooks and John Morant and those boys together, I mean Grind City will be back, baby. He's giving me
Might
Zach
as well just
Randolph
sign Pat
vibes.
Bev too at that point. Like, go get Pat Bev too. They're like, everybody wants to call the Grizzlies like the heels of the NBA or the villains of the NBA. You get Draymond and Pat Bev on the team, bro. It's a wrap.
Yeah.
Although Draymond did throw like mad shade at Dylan Brooks, so I don't know how that'd work out, but we'll see.
I mean, I think if it was a destination of necessity over nobody else wanting Draymond, which I don't think would happen. I think most teams would
Oh,
take a
he's gonna
stab
be
at
very sought
Draymond.
after.
Um,
Right.
but I mean, a lot of people say Memphis or Orlando or Dallas would be a good place for Draymond if he decides to leave Golden State after this season. And with your star players being back on the books as far as needing extensions, that's going to be a real question for the Warriors GM. But it's beside the point. But
Yeah.
the big thing is that when it comes to the Suns, it's not going to get easier. Like you said, it's probably going to be Lakers and Warriors duking it out in the second round, which I think that series will be fantastic. I think Golden State probably takes care of the Lakers. I think they just have too many good
Yeah.
shooters, and I don't think the Lakers have the shooters to keep up. Like you said, Reeves has been playing well. Uh, Rui's been playing really well as well. Not the last two games, but he's been playing better as a whole uh, in the playoffs, coming part of this Lakers team. But I just don't think they've got the sharpshooters. I mean, if LeBron isn't hitting his threes, and I mean, if when you have Anthony Davis stepping out to shoot threes, you're in trouble. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, like that. I mean, we know that Anthony Davis can knock him down, but like, no one's like, hey, let's set a pick at the top of the screen for Anthony Davis, like, because that's like his shot. Nobody's
Yeah.
saying that. Um,
That's more Reeves, Rui, and D'Lo, pretty much.
Yeah, D'Lo has been the one that you have to watch out for because he didn't play well the first three games when Rui did play well, and then the last two games he's been playing a lot better. So he's kind of on the upswing, heading into
Yeah.
this game six. So maybe he's getting some footing and taking some shots away from Rui because he's making them. So
Yeah.
interesting,
I mean,
interesting talk when it comes to NBA playoffs. Lots of games still going on. Let's move on to something you're probably excited about. Titans getting approved for a $760 million stadium. The whole entire building process is going to cost $2.1 billion, but the city did approve using taxpayer money to pay for $760 million of that through a city bond. Are you excited for this prospect of being able to have the stadium of your team host, Final Fours and other things, opposed to just better home games?
absolutely. And it's like what some people might not like be hip, but it's like they are building it to be like at one of those stadiums with a retractable roof. It looks kind of like a love child of Allegiant Stadium and SoFi Stadium, so it looks like it's going to be really good. Now, obviously, that brings the prospect of possibly having like the Super Bowl there or the Final Four, because I mean, Nashville as a city has been able to prove that they can sell out major events. For those of you guys who don't know, I'm a big wrestling fan. They had SummerSlam over there last year, and SummerSlam sold out. Like, obviously, they do have to like tarp off a few like the seats because I mean, wrestling events like you got to have like the camera crew and whatnot. But no, like they sold out SummerSlam, and they had a pretty much full stadium to where like it felt like really felt like it was a WrestleMania. Like SummerSlam's like one of the what they call the big four pay-per-views. So it's like it's always a big deal. It's not as big as WrestleMania, but it's like definitely up there. So I feel like that, and then of course years ago they had the NFL draft. They had like a big showing for
Yeah,
that. So Nashville has shown that they are like they can hang with some of the bigger sports markets out there. So obviously the Titans and Predators aren't really looked at as like, important teams in the grand scheme of things to a lot of people, but it's like Nashville is showing that they can host these big events. So having this big stadium, like I love Nissan Stadium. Nissan Stadium is a great stadium, but at the same time, it's like in order for the city to be able to hold these bigger events, they're gonna need like a stadium that has like a retractable roof because Nashville weather, or just Tennessee weather in general, it's real wishy-washy, and it's like obviously like in February it definitely gets cold there, so it's like it's not a practical place to have a Super Bowl if you're not going to have a stadium that at least is like at the very least isn't like MetLife, where MetLife's like the big bowl pretty much, or the big dome. They're not dome, but it's like it feels like a dome just because how high like the stadium is, but it's like there's no roof over it. But having a stadium with a roof is going to be essential to like eventually hosting a Super Bowl or hosting big events during like the winter and fall times. So,
yeah. I mean, and like you said, they when they hosted the NFL draft, they hosted approximately 600,000 people over 3 days. So
mm,
as you said, we know that people turn out for events in Nashville, and there's so many things to do in that city, anyways. that
Yeah,
if you're planning on going to one of these events, you have multiple reasons to stay in the city, you have multiple things to see in the city. Um, and I agree. I think this is going to be a great thing for the team. I think it'll be a great thing for Nashville as a city. You're talking
yeah,
about job creation. You're talking about getting more foot traffic through Nashville. Um, Now, Tennessee, like, as a state, we know it has, plenty of stops. Graceland. Memphis is a good
mhm,
city as well. But I think this is good for them. It's a big build, and like you said, it does look kind of like the love child between SoFi and Allegiant. But that's not a bad thing. Those
not at all.
stadiums are fantastic. So I think that you know the Titans also agreed to waive $32 million owed by Nashville for money spent during the Nissan Stadium build over the last 4 years,
Yeah,
and they'll pay the remaining $30 million in bonds with the current stadium. So
yeah.
they're moving some money around even from still Nissan stadiums construction over to the new one. Um, I They said let's see, it says a new 1% hotel motel tax, um, all of in stadium sales tax, and 50% of sales taxes from the 130 acres around the stadium will pay off the bonds for the stadium. um, so I mean, it's a 30-year lease.
Yeah.
It's a long time, as it should be. Um, I just think that this is one of those things where we'll be talking about it as a destination for other events, especially events that I love, like the Final Four. Having that in that stadium, I mean, I loved it when it was down in Jerry World.
Yeah.
I thought that was a fantastic venue for it. I think that this is going to be just as good, if not better,
Mm,
than that one. So exciting things happening for your Titans before even the draft takes place. So
right.
thought I would touch on that. And as we talk about the draft, let's talk about that number one pick, right? Lots of talk going around. Bryce Young, we know, went to Carolina to go, train with them, and that was the last team that he went to go meet with. He's not meeting with any other teams because he is for sure thinking that he is the guy. And on the other hand, you have Will Levis texting family members and telling people he is moving his stuff to Carolina because he believes he is the number one pick, as the GM has told him they are going to pick him for the first pick. Is this a smokescreen? Is Will Levis getting played like a fiddle here, or are we looking at something where Bryce Young just doesn't want to work out with any other teams and thinks that he's done enough to secure himself as a top three guy, and he's okay with that?
It's hard to say like what's true and what's not true. Like I like usually at this time, like we already know who the number one pick is going to be. And for a while, it had been Bryce Young. There were some murmurs that CJ Stroud was going to be the number one guy. There were even some Will Levis talk, like Will Levis, whatever you say his name. But it's like there have been talk about those guys being there. I mean, there were even some people trying to say that they should draft Will Anderson and just roll with another quarterback. Well, nah, like Carolina is in full rebuild mode, and it's time for him to go get a quarterback. Now, it could be true because apparently, from what the Colts were like, what came out of the Colts camp was the Manning family had talked Will Levis up pretty high. So that might increase his draft stock. And then you mix that with the fact that CJ Stroud did a really bad job on his test or whatever. I don't remember what the new, it's not the Wonderlic anymore, but
Mm.
I don't remember I literally said the name last week and I don't remember what it was. Whatever like the new standardized, like,
The aptitude test or something?
yeah,
I don't
whatever
know
the
what they call
aptitude
it.
test
Yeah.
is, he scored really poorly on it apparently. And I think that has always been a non starter for me because it's just like, there are plenty of quarterbacks who have scored poorly on that test who ended up being pretty good. So it's like, trying to use that against Stroud. I'm more concerned about what Stroud does on the field. And personally, I've never been too high on Stroud. I will submit that he had a better season last year than he had the previous years. Because, I mean, I even told you, like, when they played you guys, like, I wasn't all that impressed with Stroud when he played against you guys. So it's like,
Yeah.
um, I don't know what to say. Like, I honestly think Carolina's going to pick Bryce Young,
Yeah.
number one. Like, I don't see Levis going that high. Like, I still think Stroud goes 2 and then Levis goes 3. Now, if he goes to the Titans, I don't know how I'm going to feel about that, but
Where,
we'll
where
see.
where are you guys picking at?
we're picking at 11,
11.
so we'll definitely like I'd assume that Stroud and Young will be gone, and then as far as quarterbacks goes, it'll either be like Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. I'm not in love with either one of them.
Yeah.
Richardson went to Florida. Obviously, for those of you guys who don't know, I'm a big FSU fan, so I'm not a big Anthony Richardson fan. And then Levis just fell off after like a really strong early start of his year last year. So I don't know. I mean, I'd rather just wait till next year to have a shot at Caleb Williams or even Drake May or Jordan Travis, but we'll see what happens.
So as you said, they're picking out 11. If most of those guys are off the board, so you would just rather just not take a quarterback. So if you don't want to take a quarterback, who are you wanting them to take at 11?
I would say top three in order. Number one, I would want Jackson Smith and Jigba
Hmm.
because I feel like he fits a big need in the receiving core
Yeah.
because we have Traylon Burks, who's our deep threat. Then we have Kyle Phillips, who's like the slot receiver. So it's like we get Smith and Jigba, who is a route runner. Then I think we have a perfect build, like as far as like receivers go. And like he's not. Everybody thinks that he's like supposed to be this deep threat, but it's like that's not ever been his game. He's
Right.
always been like a really good route runner. Like he has speed and athleticism, but it's like his route running is what he's best known for. So we get a big route runner for Tannehill to throw to. I think that would be a good thing. And then we just go line second or third round. Second, I would probably if Peter Skoronsky's there, I think you have to pick him because of his versatility. Now, a lot of people have him as a tackle, but he probably would fit more as a guard in the NFL. And it's like people are saying, well, you know, if picking a guard at 11 isn't a good idea. And obviously, last time we picked a guard early in the draft, it was Chance Warmack, who didn't end up being very good for us. But at the same time, O line is a big need for us.
Hmm.
So if JSN's gone by 11, I say go for Skoronsky or just trade back,
Yeah.
like, honestly. But third option, if we had to pick somebody, would probably be because I even think Skoronsky might be going to Chicago anyways.
Hmm.
I think the Bears might pick him at 9 if he's
Yeah.
there. But if neither of those two are there, I'd say either trade back or maybe go for like Zay Flowers or somebody like that. I don't know. Like I just would rather address receiver or line.
Yeah.
Maybe go get Broderick Jones. I think that'd be a bit of a reach, but still.
Would you think about taking Bijan and trading that later on in the draft for something else, or using it as a bargaining chip to maybe get somebody else, or would you be okay with Bijan at 11?
I'd only be, so I'm not one of those guys who's like really like anti trading Derrick Henry because
Hmm.
my mentality has always been I'd rather get something for him now while he's at his hottest than for him to have like a sub 1,000 yard season this year and then just leave him for agency. We get nothing but maybe like draft compensation next year. But I'd be open, but it would make more sense if we traded Henry like before the draft.
Hmm.
But obviously, like last year, as we saw, we traded AJ Brown mid draft. So it's like, could we trade Henry or Tannehill mid draft? We'll have to see. But I'd be open minded to Bijan, but it's like it wouldn't be an optimal pick. Like I honestly would wait until the second round if we're gonna get a running back. But even then, I don't know. Like
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if I'd take him 11. Honestly, like
I mean,
if
he's
we're gonna get a running back, I think the better option would be to wait till the second round, and then if Jameer Gibbs or Zach Charbonnet are available, you draft one of those two.
yeah, I mean, and a lot of people have Bijan going later in the first round, anyways, to like 28 to the last couple teams, due to the fact that other teams need other things than a running back,
Yeah,
which is why I thought you would be like, because like you said, you need offensive line play and you need wide receiver play. And
yeah.
Burks, I mean, when you drafted him last year, you weren't super high on him. Do you feel like he is developing the way you've liked to? I mean, as a deep threat at Arkansas.
I mean, he didn't get to play a whole lot last year just because of different injuries, and obviously our line was just complete garbage. So it's like regardless of who was playing quarterback between Tannehill, Dobbs, or Willis, like they couldn't get the ball to him because they had no time to.
Yeah.
Because anytime they drop back, whoever's playing, whoever's on Dennis Daly's side is getting right back there immediately. So it's hard to say, but from the little we saw of him, I felt like the big comparison for him last year was AJ Brown.
Yeah.
And I definitely got that vibe from him last year when he made the plays that he made. So I like him.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's a number one receiver right now,
But you don't think
which
it's
is
a
why
wasted pick, right? You don't think it's a
Well,
wasted pick, right?
nah.
Yeah.
I wish we would have drafted him without trading AJ, but I don't think it was a wasted pick. And it's like people are trying to say that, oh, you guys got steamrolled in that trade. I'm like, well, if you're referring to Malik Willis, then sure, because the teams already seem to have given up on him anyways. But the jury's still out on Burks. We don't know if Burks is going to be better than or worse than AJ yet. So it's hard to tell after just 1 year of not playing, like missing 7 games and only
Yeah.
starting 5 of the 10 you played. So time will tell. But
Yeah.
I like what I've seen from him so far.
Yeah, he looks serviceable. He looks like someone that you can count on to catch the ball occasionally when you
Yeah.
need it. And I thought it was a good pick for you guys last season because of the comparison. I thought he had a similar body type and a similar play style, and I thought that was really going to be kind of like you might miss a step because he is young and it takes a little bit of time for these younger guys to acclimate to like the speed and stuff of the NFL. It is a big step up. So he handled that pretty well. And like if he stays healthy, like you said, and if your offensive line can protect, I think that will be the big thing this year. So if you take an offensive lineman at number 11, I know I don't have a problem with that because protecting the quarterback these days seems to be the most important thing. But let's just hope it works out better than Womack did.
I actually had a friend try to say that we should draft Lucas Van Ness at 11. And I'm not saying I think Van Ness is going to be a good player. But after spending the money we just spent on Arden Key and having Harold Landry come back and still having Rashad Weaver on the bench, and then if need be, having Danico Autry who can bump out to the edge, drafting an edge rusher would be incredibly stupid. Like I would honestly would be livid if we wasted a draft pick on an edge. And again, I think LVN is going to be great. We don't need an edge rusher. We don't need an edge rusher right now.
No, you got other things to worry about. So yeah, well, I'll be on the lookout for that then. If that happens, then I know I'll be seeing tweets from you about that.
Oh yeah, you will.
So, but speaking about the draft, so as you said, like you're okay with taking a skill position player later on. Let's talk about a skill position player that looks like it might be available later on in Stetson Bennett. Look, I mean, we know the guy is an older player coming into this league, considering he's like, a 7th-year senior or whatever you want to call it. I mean, just, super senior, was there at Georgia forever. But the consistency of his play and his ability to make that job look easy down there at Georgia makes a lot of GMs, I guess, feel like they can trust putting him in, if not a starting role, but like as a solid backup, right? But I can't imagine trying to justify drafting Stetson Bennett in like the 2nd or 3rd round just to be your backup quarterback, right? But with Kirby Smart getting all these phone calls from GMs being like, so what do you think about Stetson? Like, Stetson's, the initial thought was the dude isn't going to get drafted. My opinion is he's going to get drafted because of his play at Georgia and because of the fact that that he's got that experience and that maturity that I think a lot of younger quarterbacks coming into the NFL don't have, and I feel like that kind of hinders them when they come in. He might be able to, bump himself up to something a little more serviceable sooner than some of these younger guys that you're going to pick at that 1, 2, 3 spot that might have those growing pains that Stetson might not have when it comes to at least the football IQ part of the game, especially compared to CJ Stroud, but what are your thoughts on Stetson Bennett? Do you think he's a first, 2nd round guy, or are we looking at him going later than even the 3rd round here?
Honestly, I can't see Bennett going I can't see him going before day 3, honestly. And it's not, I mean, he could still go like 3rd round or something like that, but it's just like, you look at the quarterbacks who are supposedly going to get drafted 1st round, like Young, Stroud, obviously, Richardson, and Levis. And then even there are murmurs that Hendon go late first round,
Yeah.
early second round. It's like you look at the rest of the quarterbacks you have, Tanner McKee. He played at Stanford. Stanford wasn't like a great school by any means, but it's like he definitely has impressed people apparently. And obviously, with the league trending towards more athletic quarterbacks, I think that is a really good thing for guys like Malik Cunningham and even Max Duggan as well. Now, I don't think Duggan is going to be like anything crazy in the NFL, but it's like there are definitely quarterbacks who you can see who are younger and like, are a bit more athletic. I'm not saying like Bennett is definitely he has athleticism to him. Like he kind of reminds you athletically of like, I'm trying to think who he really reminds me of. Like, he's like 5'11". It's like, he doesn't have like a big body structure. Like he's very undersized, and I feel like that's like one thing that people really knock him on. But it's like he does have athleticism, but he's just not as athletic as like the other guys who are like bigger and taller than him, like Hooker, like DTR from UCLA,
Yeah.
like Duggan, obviously. So it's
He's
like
not
I
a dual
think that's
threat.
something that
Yeah.
people
He's not a dual threat
not
guy.
like people. That's something that people not knock him for. But obviously, like you mentioned, the character issues are another big thing. And I feel like that's probably why people are calling Kirby because, like, they see this guy who won 2 national championships in a row. So it might just be a situation where they're just doing their due diligence and seeing, like, could this be somebody that we want to pick in the third round and maybe just make a project player, you know? And he might very well end up being a solid backup. Like, I couldn't imagine that he's going to be like a great starter,
Yeah, yeah.
but he has the pedigree. Like he obviously played at Georgia, won the 2 national championships with them. But it's like, how much of that was really like his doing
Mm.
at the end of the day? I mean, I know it sounds crazy to say, but it's
But
like,
it's true though.
you had probably one of the most dominant defenses in the past 2 seasons. You had a really good running game to depend on. And you had some really good receivers as well. I mean, obviously George Pickens was one of his receivers a couple of years ago. Well, yeah, like a couple of years or a year
He
ago.
there for that? Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
You're
like
right. Yeah.
he was there like for the first natty. So it's like
Yeah.
you had guys to throw to. So it's like I feel like that definitely helped his draft stock out. But it's just like saying he's going first or second day is kind of crazy to me, just because I feel like there are better quarterback prospects than him personally.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at a team like Green Bay, for example, right? With Aaron Rodgers finally signing that deal with the Jets, maybe a team like Green Bay willing to pick somebody up like Stetson Bennett because I don't know how married they are to Jordan Love. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a possible destination I could see him going to. You have other teams that are also looking for stability. I mean, Carolina, if they take one of these guys, with Bryce Young or whatever, you might take a shot at Stetson as well later on if he's there, just to
yeah,
kind of hedge your bets there. Um, I mean, the Texans look like they're pretty married to CJ Stroud at this point. I mean, you have teams that could use a good solid backup. I mean, Seattle is another team I like to bring up that's probably looking for a serviceable quarterback to back up Geno. I mean, I don't know if Geno's even going to be coming back, depending on how that goes. Um, I mean, I kind of agree. I don't see him going first or second round, but it scares me that the talk is getting to that point, right? Because it's like,
yeah,
man, I mean, it really kind of shows you that maybe the stock that we're putting into these top quarterbacks maybe isn't as strong as we thought going into this draft. We thought, oh, these guys are going to be, the guys that you're going to want to draft. But if you start talking about Stetson Bennett going day 2 here, then are these guys really? Is the gap really that wide? Because at
right,
first we were like Stetson Bennett probably not getting drafted. My question to you is, who gets drafted if at all first, Duggan or him? Because I think that you might be leaning a little bit more towards Duggan with the athletic ability and dual threatness of Max Duggan, being able to use him in maybe multiple spots, maybe becoming like oh God, what's his name? The guy from New Orleans, Taysom Hill, becoming like a
yeah,
Taysom Hill type of player where Max Duggan could be probably in the slot. I mean, he's got speed. But if he doesn't work out as a quarterback, he might be open to moving around like that. I feel like Stetson kind of comes off as a guy that's like, I'm a quarterback and I'm a quarterback only type of guy.
Yeah,
So I think he might be limited there. But my opinion is, if my Patriots were to pick up Stetson Bennett, I would not be upset. I don't like
yeah,
Mac Jones. I was high on him coming in because of the Alabama pedigree, SEC, national title, same kind of thing, right? I mean, he had kind of the same resume as Stetson Bennett coming into this thing, and I thought, he could be the guy. Lost all that weight, looked super cut in the offseason this last year, and he just doesn't have any weapons to throw to, and it's been kind of the same story the last 2 years for at least my Patriots. It's been, we don't have any skill position guys, and
yeah.
I think that drafting him, if he falls really deep in the draft, I wouldn't have a problem with it because I feel like he might be a better option than Mac Jones. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, I can see what you're saying, like from the perspective of like being like being a Patriots fan, because obviously Mac Jones hasn't really showed much of anything. Jury's still really out on Bailey Zappi, but not enough to like justify not drafting a quarterback if the opportunity came. Now, as far obviously the Titans are going to be in the quarterback because Tannehill's in the last year of his contract. There's a lot of talk that he might get moved. Uh, there's a lot of talk that they've given up on Malik Willis, and then they also let Josh Dobbs go back to Cleveland. So Dobbs isn't even an option anymore. But it's like between those two, again, like you said about Duggan, it's like I feel like Duggan would be more open minded to playing a different position than Bennett would. And it's like Bennett, obviously Bennett's not like Chris Winkie or Brandon Whedon
Yeah.
age, like when they got to like through the draft, because Winkie was like early 30s when he got drafted, or late 20s, and then Whedon was like 28 when he got
Yep.
drafted. Bennett's 25 right now. He's going to be 26 in October, whereas Duggan is 22 right now,
Mm.
and he just turned 22
Mhm. Yeah.
last month. So it's like, there's like a big age discrepancy. Duggan's obviously like more of the archetype of a quarterback that you would want to play on your team, whereas Bennett is shorter and he put up the stats for sure, but it's like at the same time, it's like, he had a lot more to depend on than Duggan because TCU, I mean, a lot of those games last year, TCU plays, like those are games where Duggan had to be the one to like bring, like, put the team on it. Like not as well, and I'll just say it, like he had to put the team on his back
Yeah.
because they didn't like he was the main guy in TCU, whereas Stetson Bennett was just a guy in
An
Georgia.
asset. Yeah, he
Like
was more of an
yeah, like,
asset than the main thing Stetson Bennett was. So I mean, and the thing about Max Duggan that makes him so polarizing is the fact that he was not even starting when that season started. Chandler Morris was starting for the Horned Frogs and then got hurt, and then that opened the door for Max Duggan to sneak in. And the next thing you know, here comes a Heisman finalist. Here comes these really close wins against mediocre teams like West Virginia and Oklahoma State, and the big win against OU was kind of the catapult that kind of launched them into relevancy last season. And they took advantage of that. They took advantage of their schedule getting easier down the stretch as far as opponent talent goes. And they enjoyed the fact that the teams that they had to hurdle over in the beginning of the season were riddled by injuries, and they were able to take advantage of that. And we
exactly.
saw them play at their height against Michigan and then at their lowest depth against Georgia. But my opinion was that we probably should have been seeing Ohio State there instead of Georgia. But I don't think I'll ever
Yeah,
not die on that hill. But I mean, I think that um, like you said, that Georgia defense was outstanding. You have a running game to depend on when you're struggling, and that's not the comfort of what you're going to get going to most of these NFL teams that are going to want you if you're an early draft pick. But for him,
yeah,
if he's a later draft pick, he might still have those assets at his disposal. What if a team like San Francisco picks him up? We've seen what they've been able to do with Brock Purdy. We've seen what they've been able to do with quarterbacks that weren't exactly in a starting position and still been able to be successful due to the fact that Debo's running like crazy, due to the fact that defense is so good, right? I feel like that would be a perfect fit for him, um, especially now that Jimmy G is gone.
yeah.
The door is kind of wide open for someone like him to take full advantage of that opportunity. So we'll see. I think that he's probably the most interesting um, prospect right now because of the fact that it's so like, what the hell is going to happen with him? Like, is he going
Right.
to be way late or is he going to be super early? We were talking about, is this a mistake or is this a great pickup? I mean, it's just kind of like, I mean, if he gets drafted in the 5th round, no one's going to say that's a bad pick.
Right.
I don't think anybody's calling it a bad pick if it's late 3rd round. I think it's a bad pick if it's late 1st round or early 2nd round.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you're doing that, then your GM is probably just insane. I think that I mean, or the SEC bias is stronger than any Kool-Aid we're drinking.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of what's going on right now as far as NFL draft is concerned. It's just really talks about either, Will Levis going 1, if not, I mean, the funny thing is telling your family that is wild to me. Like I mean, if you're that confident, I I don't know. I just that storyline is wild to me that he's texting family members being like, "Yeah, like I'm all set to go out and move my stuff out to Carolina," when it seems like
It
Bryce Young
reminds
is
me
the
of
guy.
draft day, bro. It reminds me of that one dude from draft
Yes.
day. Like, I kind of hope for Levis's sake that he does get drafted. Where like, I kind of hope the Panthers now pick him overall because if they don't, he's gonna look so goofy.
I mean,
Oh my god.
oh, it's gonna be so bad. All right. Anyways, let's get into some picks here before we get out of here. I appreciate you being here with me today, friend. It's
Anytime.
been a good time. Let's talk about Saturday and Sunday NBA games going on here, and we can give your picks here. So, first game, Phoenix and Denver. Denver a 2.5 point favorite here in Game 1 at home in the Rockies. Your thoughts on the spread over under 225 for this game?
225. I'm gonna go with Denver. Okay, I think Denver definitely covers because as great as Phoenix is, you know, I don't know if they're going to be able to hang with uh Joker at this point. I just have a lot of faith in Joker and everybody else around him that the Nuggets are definitely gonna. What's the word I'm looking for? They're gonna come out and like they're actually going to look like a dominant #1 seed. Because obviously, like in years past, they've gotten like the Western Conference Finals and they've fallen short. But I think this is the year that they'll actually get it together. But I got the Nuggets winning this first game at home.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. And the second game, Sunday, Miami Heat and Knicks. The Knicks 4.5 point favorites. They are obviously the home team since the Heat are the 8th seed. The over under for this is only 206, so I think it's going to be a kind of a defensive battle here. Your thoughts on Knicks Heat?
I'm gonna go with the. This is hard.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the Knicks to win. I'm gonna go with the Knicks covering, and I think it'll go over. I think they'll definitely put up a lot of points. I think Jimmy Butler's definitely gonna put in the work, but it's like overall, you can get like first like somehow some way they're able to get by the Bucks with all the injuries that they had, but I feel like this next team is just built different. And obviously, like they had a big loss in Jericho Sims off the bench, but I like, Mitch Rob's the main dude they gotta worry about. Julius Randle's coming back. So it's like I think the Knicks will take care of it. And I honestly will pick the Knicks to win this series in general. I think it'll be like 4 games to 2, but it's like I think the Knicks got the series in general.
Yeah, I mean this is one of the better matchups I feel like as far as two teams duking it out. I think you're looking at these two games, Nuggets and Suns and Knicks and Heat, and I feel like both these series could go 7, and I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
I think that they're very evenly matched, and the way that their star players ebb and flow as far as production goes kind of matches up pretty well. Because again, you're talking about a Jimmy Butler guy that came off of 56 points, dropped 36 the next night, and then doesn't really have much of a break. 2 days, 3 days
Right.
in between games. Will he drop 30 plus again? I don't know. I mean, like I said, the stats don't support it, but he has been playing out of his mind. So if that continues, the Heat definitely have a chance to take this series from the Knicks. But yeah, I don't have a problem with you taking the Knicks game 1, just due to the fact that I feel like that place is going to be juiced to the brim.
Yeah.
The stars will be out, and I expect that place to be in full playoff mode. So Interesting stuff going on there. Let's touch a little bit of XFL action, right? Everybody loves the XFL. Playoff time is upon us in the XFL. We got our first round playoff matches going on this weekend. Again, it's only 4 teams making the playoffs for the XFL. You have Arlington and Houston in the first game, and then you have Seattle and DC in the second one. First matchup, big game. Bob Stoops versus the Roughnecks. Roughnecks are a 6.5 point favorite, but the Renegades have covered the last 2 weeks when they've been the underdogs. They did lose to the DC Defenders by 2 last week, 28-26, but they were 6.5 point dogs, so they covered that. Renegades covering this one, or are the Roughnecks gonna be XFL Super Bowl bound here?
From what I've seen from both of these teams, I just like Houston a little bit more. Arlington, I'm trying to remember. Well, give me a second. I actually got to look this up real quick. But I'm trying to remember who the one, because I don't remember if it was Arlington or Houston who beat DC and were like the only team to beat DC. So I got to look that up real quick. But I don't know. I just like Houston a lot more from like what I've seen from them. I think it'll be a close game. I think Arlington definitely is a force to be a force to be reckoned with. But at the same time, the Roughnecks were definitely the cream of the crop when it comes to the South Division. I mean, it's not like they just like went barely won the division. They won the division going away. Like, I mean, nobody else in the division was really rocking with them. So I'm gonna go with Houston covering.
All right, Houston -6.5. Not a bad pick at all. I'm looking here as well. I don't. Orlando beat DC by 1.
Oh, so it was nobody in the
Yeah,
South. Never mind.
yeah,
Or was
37-36.
Orlando who didn't even make the playoffs? So
Yeah, they
or
didn't
was
make
the
it
South?
unfortunately, but Orlando got that 1 point win.
And
Um,
that
I,
was their only win of the season.
oof, oof. Um, what about you like DC versus the Fighting Ben DiNucci's and the Sea Dragons of Seattle? I mean, Seattle's been playing pretty well. DiNucci dropping 4 touchdowns last week, looking like a stud. But like you said, DC as a team, they just don't lose. 3 point
Yeah.
favorites going in on Sunday.
See, the thing that worries me about DC in the playoffs is just that it seems like every time DC, like every week, DC wins, but it's like it's a really close game at the end of the day. So it's like I worry about their defense a bit. And Danucci hasn't been a slouch this year at all. So it's like it's hard to say that, DC is definitely gonna win this one. I mean, Danucci led the league in passing yards from what I'm seeing right
Yeah,
now. But he also led the league in interceptions, so it's like it really could go either way.
yeah,
But I think it really just depends on whether or not Seattle can stop Abram Smith from running all over him, because Abram Smith has been absolutely phenomenal running the football this year. He led the league in rushing yards, so I think the defenders will take care of business. I
yeah.
think they'll definitely. It'll be on the back of Abram Smith and Jordan Ta'amu, but I think DC will find a way to win this one. It'll be a close game, but we are going to get a Houston DC championship game.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, these games for DC have been super close, right? The last 2 games they've played have been Arlington and St. Louis, and both of those games combined, they only won by a combined 3 points. They won by 2 against Arlington and by 1 uh, in Week 9, I believe, against
I
who
mean, when
was
they
it?
played San Antonio this past week, I mean, they
Yeah,
won because San Antonio missed the game-winning
winning
field
field goal,
goal.
and
So,
that would have gotten them into the playoffs too. That would have been their trip there. Yeah, 25. Uh, well, yeah, Arlington in overtime in week 9, 28-26 DC. So Arlington again, as much as I love Houston, I mean Big Game Bob for me is been kind of reborn here in the XFL after his long tenure at OU. Um, but yeah, I like DC as the pick here. Look, as you said, Ben DiNucci best passer in the league, but most turnover prone as well. But that offense throws the ball a lot more than any other team as well. And I think you
Yeah.
have to look at that as kind of one of those things where that's just kind of their thing. They're willing to eat those turnovers as long as he's able to score the football 4 times through the air. You can live with 1 or 2 interceptions. Um, but this league has been wild, and with the rules and stuff, I mean, this could, no lead is really safe here, and we saw that earlier in this season. So interesting stuff in the XFL, and I look forward to the matchup between DC and Houston, or DC and Arlington, or even Seattle and Houston. I mean, I think if Ben DiNucci plays well, you could definitely see that happening. Um,
Yeah.
so let's move on to the last portion here. We're gonna head over to the Major League Baseball. I love Major League Baseball. So all these spreads are a run and a half, because everybody loves to just have run and a half spreads over here. So really, it's about just what kind of team you're on board with here. Looking at this, and it's not loading. Where are the game lines for the MLB? Um, it's wow, they're like literally not showing up. What are we doing here? Make it. There we go. Um, let's reload it and see if it pops up. There we go. So let's go with games going on tomorrow. We have Twins, Royals, Orioles, Tigers, Cubs, Marlins, Mariners, Blue Jays, Rays, White Sox. You got Guardians and Red Sox. Um, Colorado playing the Diamondbacks. That game always a fun one to watch, even though both those teams are mid.
Right.
Great jersey combination, great atmosphere. Brewers, Angels, Astros, Phillies, Rangers, and Yankees are playing their series over this weekend. Mets and Braves. What do you want to dip into here for your last pick?
Well, technically, I'm a Mariners fan, so I'll go with them.
Playing the Blue Jays. 1.5 run dogs to the Blue Jays. You like the Mariners to pull it off?
I mean, it's going to be tough. The Blue Jays are one of the best teams in the league,
Yeah.
and the M's have been really inconsistent so far this year. They're actually losing to the Phillies right now, but
Got
I'm
Castillo
gonna
on
go
the
with
mound.
I'm gonna go with the Blue Jays. Honestly,
Okay.
like realistically, I think they'll take one of these games at least, but the M's might take like I can see the M's winning like 1 or 2. Like I don't think they'll get swept in the 3-game series, but you got Luis Castillo, so they got a good shot at potentially winning, but we'll have to see.
Yeah.
Um,
It's gonna
but
be
as long as
uphill.
it ain't Robbie Ray, that's all I'm worried
Yeah,
about because Robbie Ray
it's
is
gonna
terrible.
be uphill for you for sure. I'm gonna go ahead and go with the Rockies. Or I'm gonna go with the Diamondbacks minus a run and a half here over the Rockies here. Um, I like both of those teams as far as like just fashion. Great fashion. I love the purple jerseys. I love the Diamondbacks Serpientes jerseys that they rolled out for their city uniform. Those khaki ones that just are. It looks like sand with with the script Hispanic name for Diamondbacks across the front. Um, and it's one of those late games. It starts at 8:40 Eastern, so I mean it's for the night owls. And as much as I don't watch baseball, I would definitely, one of the games I would love to attend would be those two teams playing each other. Probably would rather be in Colorado than Arizona.
Right.
But I think that I think those teams are mid, but it'll be an entertaining game, and I feel like
Well, not for nothing, but the Diamondbacks are currently leading the West by a half a game over the
yeah,
Dodgers, but
I
it's
mean,
early in the season.
yeah,
We know that don't really mean much of
yes,
anything.
the Dodgers farm team is here, brother. So we support the Dodgers sometimes. But that's that's kind of how this weekend wraps up sports wise. Kaz, I've enjoyed our time today. It's been a real good episode, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight as far as NFL draft and Titans insight as far as the depth and what you're kind of looking for heading into this big event coming up. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
All I'm gonna say is, if we do end up trading Derrick Henry, uh, it's been a great how many years has it been? Like 7 or 8 years of him being my running back. So
King.
I'm grateful for everything he did for the team. Obviously, Titans fans have been very spoiled as far as running backs go. Obviously, when they first came to Tennessee, they brought Eddie George with them. Then we had a year of Chris Brown and then Lendale White after that. And then we got Chris Johnson. Then we had
Yes.
some bad years at running back. We had freaking Bishop Sankey, Antonio Andrews at running back. Those are great days. Then we got Henry. So I'm thankful for what he did for the squad. If he gets traded, he gets traded. But overall, I'm thankful to have been able to witness one of the best running backs of all time play for my team.
That's good. I couldn't have said it better myself. Well, episode 28 in the books. Appreciate you, Kaz, and we'll catch you all next week with another episode.
Y'all take it easy.